is away this week, so
Remember that one?
we've got the assistant stepping up. So our first order of business is to approve the the April
Yep.
minutes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the April 8th minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next order of business is public comment. And I see we've got Ellen Maloney here.
I'm the only public, I guess.
You're the only one, there's nobody online, so you've got our ear.
Okay,
So we're really happy you're here.
thanks. Well, it's nice to see you all. I'm here because of a concern about the area of land in Rupert that has been used by the Meadowy Valley Youth, whatever group I guess it was called. And just for background, I thought I'd better take a look. This is the lease that, the original lease for that land. I got that from the Rupert Town Clerk's office. It's, you'll notice it's drafted on my stationery. And at the time, the town of Paul had asked me to draw up a lease for, I think it was the town hall. Other than that, it was Nan directly, for Nan Leach, so that she could give over this portion of land for her, to the youth group, so that they could.
You're calling that a youth group?
It was.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's.
It was originally, yeah.
Yeah, it was the Meadowy Valley Youth Center, 8. This was 41 years ago.
There are two landowners, right, who each gave.
There are now, yeah. And Nan owned all of that land.
Okay.
And she, being a very public-spirited person as she is, was glad to share that. She's since given or sold under the auspices of a land trust arrangement, the land to Kenny Leach, who is her nephew, and I don't know about the other part of it. Their part of it's mostly on, just takes up part of the right of way, if I remember correctly. In any event, as time went on, it was for the use of 3 towns, all 3 of which participated in this, I don't know, I just say it was the Meadowy Valley Youth Group. And it was well used. It was used for baseball, and you all may remember there were even paddle tennis courts on there, which I never saw used, frankly. But anyhow, the years went by. It was the point of it. Well, years went by. It was well used, and then less and less so. I don't know the history of what went on with the towns. I understood that each town, Rob could correct me if I'm wrong, paid in $500 or something.
Yeah, just kind of the nominal costs for some of the
Insurance
and mowing the grass, pretty much.
Right. And at some point, apparently those payments ceased. I have no knowledge of when. It's nothing.
There was a little organization with a board from like residents from each town. There was like one person from each town. They kind of sat on a little board. They stopped meeting, and then they kind of, like, the administrative part of it kind of went defunct. So there was nobody requesting the money from the towns, so that's what kind of preempted the stopping of the payments and stuff.
I think it was always property tax exempt, probably. They were incorporated.
Yeah.
The lessee was supposed to reimburse any property taxes, it says in there.
Oh, I have no
Yeah,
idea
if that
about
was
the
just if. I mean, I don't believe there
internal
were any.
details. There was a little, an entity that kind of administrated the lease.
But again, the
use.
lessee was the Meadowy Valley Youth
Right,
Center,
right.
Correct.
not for profit, so
Correct, yeah.
they would have been obligated to, it says, covering tax assessment, utilities.
Yeah, but that was
insurance,
if
all that
any.
stuff.
I drafted that on Nan's behalf, so I put in you know, I mean, any charge that could come.
But the entity itself could probably cease to exist as a not-for-profit.
Clarence Decker started that organization back then, and in any event, it did come into use more and more as a dog park, as you all well know. And it, nobody ever, none of us have had, that do use the park, dog park up there, had any word on anything happening or there being any difficulty, or I'm sure they would have stood, you know, come up to the plate, because it is well used. It's, I've seen many individuals from Dorset using it. Not only Dorset, but certainly Pollock, Rupert, and beyond. And one person in fact, a lot of them wanted to come tonight, and I kind of discouraged them. I couldn't see a bunch of people coming for a 10-minute public comment period, and I don't think it would make that much difference. Anyway, the number of people using it is substantial. And the reason I think it's important is that in our towns, and certainly Dorset's case, we have other public lands. We have Cutler, we have the Pinnacle, we have, you know, now we have Raptor Lane. And people are bringing their dogs there in droves, especially Cutler, it's like wild dogs. But they let the dogs off the leash sometimes, and they're really asked not to. Signage politely ask people not to. And I think in some areas it may be more appropriate than others, but in any event, the land in Rupert is the only place where people can go and let a dog off leash, which you really are not invited to do at the other parks.
Because of the fence.
Yes, and it's a really positive thing, because I think it takes some pressure, I know it takes some pressure off of the other parks to keep, people especially with somewhat hostile dogs, frankly, or whatever you call it, somewhat less
Aggressive.
friendly. Yeah.
Aggressive.
There's one truck that comes over, I think it, Rob, you may know, I think it may be from East Dorset, that says beware of dogs all over the thing. I mean, it's got dogs in it, you know, I mean, it's a little bit spooky. Parks there, and
I just wanted to point out there is a dog park at Dana Thompson
yes, oh, I know that,
also,
yeah,
so that's in
But-
Manchester,
yeah.
on Route 30.
yes.
Just so we
Sure.
don't skip over.
No, I'm
the
not
fact
doing that,
that
but
that's there,
it's a lot less pleasant, and it's, this is nice, it's big, it's open, there's plenty of room to run. The other one is kind of like a fenced-in track. I'm not comfortable there, I don't go there. And there are usually a lot of dogs in it, all at the same time. It's, you could have five, at least 5 or 6, I think that's a fair interpretation. Anyway, Paula Nassavera came up with a whole bunch of names, from Paula. Julie Lake had 30 names of people that she knows use it. And then I got another bunch of 5 or 6 names from somebody else, and there are people that really care. And I would, also, interesting, state police, I believe, use it. I've not seen them myself, except one time, but I've heard that they use it fairly regularly for training or for exercising. I don't know who the dog would be, a Rutland dog maybe? Anyway, somebody that's got a canine. Because of the need, I would ask you, to consider the need, if not in taking over this lease yourselves, because you're the only unsigned off entity. But I think either that or providing something similar in one of our parks here. I think it's really called for. I think it's for the protection of our own parks, among other things, frankly. I never found any sanitary problems. People were really pretty good. There'd be one or two turds every now and then, but it was not bad. It was not what you'd expect from a public thing, you know. People the users were respectful. I don't know if it's an area that could include trees. I don't see any problem with having an area in the woods fenced off. But, again, I don't know a lot about the logistics of dog parks.
Just curious, Rob, was there any effort, Rupert or anything to get?
Remember we
people
voted on it?
Oh, I remember our
Yeah.
voting on it, but I always felt like it's okay, we're involved in.
What about
this part
everybody
over
else?
in-
The way
What about
that-
Rupert? Rupert
Yeah.
officially said no,
Yeah.
but I don't know whether they looked at whether somebody else is willing to take some degree of responsibility for
Well,
it.
like, could this group of people form a committee
Yeah.
and it's the same thing, form some sort of nonprofit and then just go back and solicit funds from the same 3 towns? That's what I would suggest.
Well, we would have done that, but for giving it up, the lease has been given up by 2 towns already. So, I mean, yes, the group would do that. There's no question that the energy is there. And it's not coming from me either. I mean, it's, I don't plan to become running anything. But,
We voted not to
Yeah.
take part when the
No,
others are.
Dorset,
Did you talk to Dawn?
no, the newspaper coverage said that Dorset had yet to do it, but you were planning to.
That's what happens when reporters call you when you're on vacation, you don't answer. They just mix it
Okay,
up.
well, in any event, my understanding,
that's
and
what
was
it
it
was.
I think it was from
No.
Don, it was Don's, my understanding, I think via
We'd
Don.
have to go back and find that. We definitely, we proposed the question to the board of, hey, nobody else is doing it.
Yeah,
Don wanted us to say, no, if nobody else is, we won't. So
Mhm.
somewhere in the minutes,
We
it
did
should
that.
read that.
that you did do
Yeah, we
it,
did
because
that.
it said that it was considered but not voted on, is what was said. But it was they said it was talked about but not voted on. That's the
Yeah.
quote from the.
That surprises me, I'm
I'm
pretty
pretty sure we voted on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have to go back and check. And I'm pretty sure we communicated it to Dawn too. It was the
It's
same.
essentially, from our perspective, to take, responsibility for a park in another town.
Right.
Is.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just very
yeah,
awkward.
I can't argue with that.
I mean, I could see it having use, but, it's a matter of, you set something like this up, then, you need to maintain the
Oh, I
legal structure.
understand
You set up the
that,
legal
yeah.
structure, so.
So, sorry, there's a lease and the 3 towns were on the lease and now we're the only town still on the lease? Is that-
Well,
No,
that's
'cause
what
the
the-
lease was to the
Yeah.
Was
the
to
organization.
Meadowy
Okay,
Valley.
and then what happened to the
And
organization?
then there was probably a separate agreement with the town, where the towns just
The
unofficially
agreement-
said,
The towns agreed on behalf for Meadowy Youth thing,
Just give an
that they would
appropriation.
maintain it.
Just the appropriation, just like giving money.
Yeah,
So,
but the,
but then if this organization had to maintain the insurance and do stuff like that,
Yes.
they didn't do
Yes.
that, so.
yes. And the organization was supposed to, I think they were appointed by the select board, I don't know how they got named, but in any event, I'm really hoping that perhaps maybe Dorset, because a lot of the users are Dorset people, would consider putting perhaps some kind of enclosed area that's dog-friendly on the Rafter Road property. And maybe, as far as I know, clearing wouldn't be a prerequisite, but I don't know whether people sue people that run into dogs,
I don't know, Rob, how do you feel about dog parks?
Put it on me.
He's got one.
You have to insure them, which is not easy. I mean, it's not, you can do it, but it's not inexpensive.
What was,
Manchester doesn't own the one in Manchester, that's owned by a separate entity. Or it's leased, the space is leased by a separate entity, so, I could, reach out to them to see why they structured it that way. I think there were some obvious concerns about,
the town's liability.
well, yeah, a little bit, or just, you can buy insurance for it, it's just, I think, not inexpensive. And then
well, it was
the
done for
capacity of the town to kind of maintain it and keep track of it, and I mean, it's kinda like Cutler, right? I mean, we've got signs all over this place that says leash your dogs, but do people do it? Some do, some don't.
Or it's like the quarries.
So our ability
Did
to.
we ever wanna have any involvement with the quarries in town? No.
Yeah, and our ability, you know, we don't have like full-time staff at a rec area like Manchester does, where they can kind of keep an eye on it, so the ability for us to keep a fine eye to it is probably gonna be somewhat limited. But that said, I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, if people think it's a good idea, I think location gets to be a little tricky. You know, you got noise and access and stuff like that, but.
Yeah, cause even like Rafter Lane, I mean, we're looking at doing other things with a lot of the land, and, but, you know, you try to set something up someplace, again, that's,
Well, I think it's, this group of people needs to come together and decide what they wanna do, and then approach us either about they wanna acquire a part of Raptor Lane to do this park, right? Or somewhere else.
Or lease it.
Partner to find
Or
a
partner.
location,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I
so
think as
people
a
love the
public-
idea of something being there, but they don't like the idea of having to
They do, well, I think one of the
manage it.
things I would throw out is if it's right in the center of town, if it's right in the center of Dorset, it'll start to get heavily used, so for the same reasons you don't wanna go to the one in Manchester,
Yeah,
that same dynamic is likely to be created probably at a centralized, you know, place in Dorset. I think the Meadowy one is just, it's so remote that the user volume is probably so thin that it is a very nice experience, because you basically are almost like in a big yard.
yeah.
But once you increase the volume of attendees, I think you'll start to hit that same kind of, you know, whatever it is that makes you not wanna go to Manchester, which is it's either a little small, or that there are quite a lot of people there, and then, you
Or
know,
it's a lot
the
of.
dog stuff is only as good as the owners, and
I'd
there's a
take
lot
my
of owners
grand-
out there that are not great.
Take my grand dogs to the dog parks in New York City, and
Mhm.
they're nice, but that's,
Crazy.
those are,
Yeah.
they're crazy, and it's a lot of effort to maintain those things, you know, because they're heavily used.
Yeah, I understand that. The,
I
one of
didn't-
the things, the insurance concern, apparently they were able to get insurance for less than $1,500 a year.
Yeah, I don't think it was, hey, we're insuring, it's insuring the playground, the kind of soccer space, the pavilion. I don't know that it was explicitly, hey, this is a dog park and we want insurance. Every bit, so during the kind of review process, you know, the other communities were kind of pointing at Dorset going, and most of the people using it for a dog park, which it's really not what it was designed to be. And then the landowner, it was communicated, at least to me, that they didn't like the use and they didn't want the use, and that was one of the kind of contributing factors into, I guess, how it ended up the way it did.
Well, partly the land trust likes all of its lands without any other encumbrance.
Sure.
And that, I think some of it was there. I do think that, I just see it as a need
Mhm.
that protects other aspects. It's very stupid. I thought I saw these incredible tracks, you know, in the snow, I'm out walking the dog and I saw these tracks and I thought, holy cow, you know, because it was, you saw the tracks, it was a four-legged animal, obviously, you could see its gait, and then down the middle was this drag mark, like, you know, thing. I thought, what kind of tail would be dragging like that, you know, I even took pictures of it. Well, it was somebody I saw thereafter who just lets her dog off leash, drops the leash handle, and it made a trail like a tail. Well, I thought pretty stupid, but still have it on my camera. I'm gonna take it off. But it was, I mean, people do characteristically
Yep.
do that, and I would say that there would be some positive aspects for, in terms of park protection that should be considered, and I was hoping that you would look at Raptor Lane, the Raptor Road with that in mind.
Well, we can take that under advisement.
I'd love to see a plan for Raptor Road too, I haven't seen a plan yet.
It was right there.
Yeah, it's on
Is that
the
it?
other side of that white piece of paper. I can turn it over if you want.
No, I'll look some other time, if it's okay to just come look?
Oh, yeah, and it's on,
It's online.
so there's an
It's online,
RFQ on the website.
On the website,
With
there's a
all,
lot
with the
of,
maps and
for
stuff.
the housing and for. the-
Yeah, I mean, with regards to Raptor, I mean, there's definitely, we don't know what's gonna transpire. There's definitely discussions about amenities and common space and green space and stuff like that
If-
adjacent to the property, but.
If there's housing built there, then
Correct,
there'll
yeah.
have to be
And
something.
if it's part of that natural evolution of things, then,
Yeah.
it may come across the table at some point.
So you don't think there's any hope in the interim for any kind of facility that, or enclosed area that Dorset folks could use?
No, well, no, I said we'd take it under advisement.
Yeah.
And then when the rest of us are here, we could discuss it. I mean, there's pros and cons,
Yeah.
no
No,
promises.
I'm aware
I-
of that, I just,
I
you
think
know,
it needs a zoning permit.
oh, wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
You think zoning permit?
I'm
I think it's, but, would it be fair to say
I'm
that?
pretty sure it does.
Yeah, it's a use,
um,
it's a change of use.
Which is, it kinda gets into the,
Okay.
the siting and that other stuff, yeah.
There are enough people really interested to be
Mhm.
supportive, I think people would be willing to pay a membership fee if you wanted.
So you know what would be helpful, and this kind of follows up on Allison's suggestion, is that you need to organize and show us that it's more than Ellen Maloney endorse it.
Okay, well, I won't be heading any organization, I can tell you that, because
Okay,
it's
but
done
I'm just
enough of
saying,
that, but,
it's as easy as a little petition,
oh, people would be happy to do it, sure.
write up a little
I was
petition.
trying to spare you all that stuff, I'd be happy to have people, I could tell somebody in Lincoln.
Well, and, as much.
Well, and a more specific, not just somehow save this, but could Dorset assist by doing X, Y, Z, or you wanna do this?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to, I think it's probably fair to say, if we're gonna do something, it would probably not be saving the place of Rupert.
Right.
Right.
It would be trying to figure out some
Well,
alternative.
unless there was enough critical mass from the other communities.
Yeah.
If the other
Well, that's,
community,
the other
that's there though.
To
that's-
reopen the discussion.
no, but it's,
It needs to
be- The other towns
Rupert,
said
Rupert
no.
and Paulette said no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there needs
Yeah,
to be
I know
town,
the select boards
towns
did, but the
themselves,
people
yeah.
didn't know it.
Right.
Yeah, well,
So
then
if the
they need to
people
go back.
reopen it,
No,
Just-
but they're
just-
there, I just didn't, I told them not to go. But,
No, I mean, they need to go back to their
So
town.
go back to the
Start
towns and then get all 3 towns
oh,
open
I don't
to
think
doing
that
it
would
again.
happen in Rupert,
Probably not.
Well,
I mean, it's
that's-
their land.
That's not
Yeah.
realistic.
I mean, it's in their town and stuff,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, I was frankly, I wasn't aware that it existed, and I was kinda shocked that, at first when I said, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah,
You
in
know,
another
right,
town,
right.
yeah.
But, I could see it being a nice thing to have, but,
No, I mean, there is some substance to the Dorset dog park use for sure. I mean, I think the 2 little meetings that we had there with Dawn, and Rupert and Paulette, I mean, I went there twice and literally the only people that came there were people from Dorset walking their dogs.
but in a way, it would be
So
really,
the other communities kind of look.
if the housing project, starts to, get some momentum and all, that would be,
Yeah.
this would be a
think
great
that,
thing to try to fit in.
Siting is important.
That would be an asset for
Yeah.
those communities
I think
too.
you
It
need
would be a
the,
double whammy
Why not?
asset, because it would also keep them protected from having other people's dogs run around. I mean, it would protect the housing concepts. Because the current practices, and people are very polite, but do let their dogs off leash, they say, oh, I'm so sorry, and
Yeah, cause right across from my house is a wonderful,
yeah,
people like to park in my driveway and
yes,
go walk their dogs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So again, I would
So you would
encourage
like
you
a petition,
to put together a petition
show some
okay?
substance.
with a statement. And heck, I don't care if the people are from Rupert or Pollitt or wherever.
There isn't some from.
User base.
Yeah,
Just
just see what the user base, because maybe we can encourage people from Middletown Springs to come down to Dorset and then, walk their dog, and then maybe we'll stop at Williams Store and buy
Yeah,
lunch.
and I think that's kind of how it transpired in Manchester, and they just kind of added one level to it of, hey, we'd like you to, help with some of the infrastructure costs. I don't know whether or not they insure it, but there's a group that speaks to that.
Yeah, there's a dog group, and
It's Manchester,
they
the town
approached,
probably doesn't do anything.
No.
they approached the rec committee themselves.
Yeah.
And But they were already like a legal entity when they did it.
Maybe talk to them
Or
about,
they would spin off a
Yeah.
Dorset satellite.
There you go.
yeah, might make sense to.
So if they were to do a petition and ask that you assist by maintaining the,
Just say, we would love to have a dog park.
Yep, and then where does it go? What does it look like?
Well, and say
Who
that,
pays
you
for
know,
it? I think you
Say
know, all
that-
that stuff.
I think those things could just be.
After, yeah, that would be the
Yeah,
next,
okay.
the first step is just like,
Yeah, we just wanna see the interest.
who wants
Okay.
it and how
Yeah,
many?
but you
and-
would-
Is
But
it
you
5 to
would-
10 or is it 50?
Yeah,
but you'd also need to kind of be clear that, you know, you are talking about a fenced-in area for a dog park.
Yeah.
You know,
yes,
because, you know, we're just, you know, like you say, right now we have open spaces, but that, it doesn't fill that need.
yeah,
So, to have a dog run sort of place.
yeah. Well, it is, you know, dogs do need to run, so it's, you know, it's, well, good, okay.
Well, thank you, Ellen.
I
for
will
coming in.
pass along this word back and let the people with more energy than I've got to go.
Yeah, do you know functionally, have they ceased, I mean, the fence is still there, right?
Oh, yeah, it's still
Yeah.
being used, yeah, it's, you know, I don't think.
Till the fence comes down.
People don't know, if people don't know that Dorset, people believe it was in the paper, because that's all they know of it.
Yeah,
So their understanding was that you would be voting on it tonight. That's, no, I mean, well, actually,
think
next
we
meeting,
voted.
I missed
that's,
that article,
I
Yeah,
thought
go
the
ahead, it
headline
was-
said
it
it was
was-
a done deal.
yeah, it did,
Yeah.
it did, but if you read it, it was both in the Herald, I mean,
yeah.
it was both in the
Shoot.
Banner and the, just you can
Journal.
Google it. It's,
Yeah, I can show you my email response 2 days after she ran it.
your response to her, you
Yeah,
mean?
I never gave any response and they ran, I never gave any input, nothing. No
Okay.
phone calls, no nothing.
Well, in any event, you can look it up, because
So I don't know, when was this?
About 2 weeks ago,
It
3
was
weeks
in
ago.
Spain, that's
it
where I
was
was.
a little more than that,
I
but
was
sure.
in Spain, that's where I was.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
so,
You're welcome, Ellen.
yeah.
Always good
yeah.
to see you.
Yeah, good, good. Oh, let's see.
All right, our next order of business is the zoning board of adjustment, which used to be 9 people, is now 7, but there's only 6. We need a new person, and they've written us a letter recommending that we appoint Anne-Marie Leroux to the ZBA, and Anne-Marie has been nice enough to come down here and do
the ZBA minutes are there, the application's there.
Yep.
You can- So the ZBA's recommended her, you guys can ask any questions and then make your decision about the appointment.
Well, I think I'd probably start it off with a motion that the select board appoint Anne-Marie Leroux to the zoning board of appeals.
adjustment.
Adjustment, sorry. Zoning board of adjustment.
Thank you.
Is there
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Or is there any discussion?
Um,
Awfully nice of you to come down and.
Yeah.
and-
No problem. I live in the neighborhood.
Yes,
I'm not gonna stay tonight though, because I have
And we
out-of-state
don't
company.
We don't expect you to, I'm sorry, this took
No,
much longer
that's
than
fine.
normal.
It's all new learning.
So this, it looks like you're just interested in getting involved and all that. Your background seems to fit nicely and all. But-
Yep, I feel like throughout my, we've lived here since 1985 and, you know, I've done various things at various times depending on children's activities and whatnot, so.
What did you teach at Mill River?
I was at Mill River for 36 years and I taught math and computer science.
Good. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done deal.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. When the ZBA likes you, it's kind of a,
Starting off on the right foot.
it's a strong,
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's not just warm bodies, they want active minds.
All right.
real people.
Thank you.
Thank you for
You're
coming.
welcome. Okay, next, we need to approve the local emergency management plan, which is a yearly event, right?
Yes.
And,
This time of year, every year.
Probably a lot of details here that we hope we never have to use, but it's there for a reason, just in case.
Yep. This is part of the kind of FEMA process, part of the state emergency management checklist that you need to be eligible for certain funding. So
There's no change from last year?
no change other than just some of the points of
Yeah,
contacts.
the people changed, yeah.
Yeah, phone numbers for fire chiefs, stuff like that. But other than that, nothing of substance.
You have an extra T in your last name on the front page.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you didn't have a contact, well, you have a phone number, okay, cool. Okay.
Partway through the document, there's a form that looks like this, and that's what we're,
Kentucky.
Made it harder.
that's kind of what we were,
Yes, you are Rob Gaetati.
yes, that's cool, just keep going with the Ts.
And I kind of went through and it's fair amount of stuff. Now, we've run tests sort of things before, I guess.
The fire departments do, yeah, I mean, typically, our emergency response function is mainly around, fire. We contract out for police so that, you know, the county sheriffs do, drills with the schools, they do joint drills sometimes with, rescue squad and the fire departments, but they kind of coordinate separately for that.
So wasn't
So
there
our-
that mass casualty thing that was
Yeah.
done with, because then it becomes, because as a regional area, if it's
Yeah.
bigger, then we tend to
So typically the
tie
town,
together with
yeah,
Manchester. right?
typically like our fire chiefs are kind of the direct response, points for that stuff. Because the other entities are external, so they all kind of coordinate together and they do that through the fire departments.
And how do you decide when something is bigger and needs to be more regionalized? Just
It
curious.
depends on, what it is and kind of who has the oversight over it. Typically, it would be like myself or the fire chief,
Yeah.
and they would bring in the resources that they need.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you remember the plane
Yeah.
thing in Manchester, that's kind of, at the end of the day, it was the Manchester, fire, or actually Manchester Assistant Chief, who's also on our highway department, doing all that stuff, with obviously tight, communication with their police department, state police, all that kind of stuff. And they all have, they go through, incident command training. There's a basically certification that typically like the admins like me and then the fire chiefs all get from, that's at a federal level that kind of sets up the hierarchy of, okay, here's the
Yeah, 'cause I thought
situation,
there is a normal sort
Mhm.
of,
Yep, and it kind of depends on the issue and who's got authority over it.
and do we, so all that's pretty well, because we have to do this for our town, but then we also need to know how we coordinate with others, and that's all
Yep.
kind of understood as well.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep, and they do that. I mean, we have very kind of generalized mutual aid agreements with Manchester for the most part. And the fire departments all kind of have their informal mutual aid agreements where they'll respond to calls. I think at the Plain site, there's probably easily over 100 people there from multiple service organizations from as far away as, Winhall, and then maybe Arlington for fire, which is, not too far, but it's right there. So it's very common for for the fire entities to work together.
So I see, do you need to sign tonight?
Yes. Yep.
So it says Megan term?
It's,
Shall I just
yeah.
Place my name?
You can put your name in there too.
Yeah, and it's okay if I sign
Yeah.
it? Yep. Okay, so we just need a motion to,
approve?
yep.
I'll-
Allison?
Yes.
Yeah, Allison made it, I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So in both places, Ron?
Yep.
Did you bring your whiteout with you?
I do have it.
Too late.
No, it's fine, yeah.
President works,
That's fine too.
All right. There's the important page. I'll take care of the rest. All right, thank you very much. Next, we have approved the grand list extension.
So this is, we've done this, I think, the last 2 years. This is allowing us to file the grand list with the state a little bit later. We're not thinking that we're gonna need the full 30 days, but we are finishing the end of a full town-wide reappraisal, so this affords a little bit of time.
Wiggle room.
Does this need to, do we need to finish the BCA sort of process before this becomes?
Nope, so it gets the actual, that runs kind of concurrently with the grand list. So the grand list still gets lodged, it's still there, and then the appeals process just kind of runs concurrently.
Again, same issue, says chair of the
And I've
select
got-
board.
I've got a clean copy here, and you, as vice chair, you can sign,
Shall I
assuming.
print? Oh, I guess we need a vote.
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for a grand list extension.
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Today's date,
Yes. Yep.
5/20.
Yep, and I've got a little bit of commentary, related to the reappraisal. So if you remember, I think last week I'd sent out the letter, the draft, kind of a sample of the draft letter that's gonna go around. They basically have, a synopsis of the changes, and then an explanation of kind of the informal, hearings process, which, is kind of like a primer, for the whole process, where the consultant is making themselves available to answer any questions anybody has about the new value related to their property, so really anything. What they're hoping is that, if folks, feel the number is wrong one way or the other, that we're gonna make information available to them, a couple of lists. There's gonna be access to Patriot, which is kind of the new assessing software that we're gonna be adapting information into, tax maps and stuff like that. There's gonna be a link on the website, people can click through to that, they can see information about their property, neighbors' properties. There's also gonna be a list of like a hard copy of the actual grand list document on the website. So those two things allow people to do a little bit of research on their property and kind of neighboring properties, the neighborhood, look for, some comparable properties that you think might be similar to yours, to try to make an argument that, okay, I'm closer to this than this. And then, so that, in that informal process, it is informal, it's a 15 minutes, you come in, you make a little kind of argument, and then they go back and kind of look and fine tune. I mean, the biggest thing is that it's a completely new data set, because all the valuation in town is being changed. So all the underlying land values are changing, which then it affects every single property. So everyone will get some form of change. Other things to kind of take away, a lot of the values that are sitting there right now are as much as almost 20 years old, 2006. So 2006 to now, a little bit of the history, the town did a full town reappraisal in 2003. And then in 2006 did a statistical appraisal where they kind of just adjusted based on the market at the time. In 2006, if you recall, was a couple years before 08, 09 and the financial stuff. And generally the values at that time were, at least at the kind of board and town level, were viewed as being kind of elevated, kind of high. They were still kind of holding over from that little bit of a bubble before the housing downturn. That caused, so there's kind of two parts to it. The feeling that the numbers were kind of high, and then the tax rates for education property taxes are kind of driven by the common level of appraisal. So for a long time we had very little activity in terms of sales. So the data, the sales data supported the values pretty closely for quite a long time, pretty consistently. And in Dorset, typically the CLA was in that 105 to 108, which generally says, based on the 3-year sales study, the valuations across town they're about 8% high, right? Based on those sales, not necessarily the whole thing. And that had the effect of driving the rate down a little bit. So when the CLA is above 100, it puts downward pressure on the education property tax rate. So we kind of sat in this little sideways world for, I would say, about 10 years. And then we started to see stuff move again, and we started to see the CLA come down, we started to see the COD, which is another metric, go up. So then we started to talk about, okay, should we reappraise? In Vermont, you don't necessarily have to unless you trigger the parameters to reappraise, which is the CLA goes down to a certain number or the COD goes up to a certain number. So if in 2018, we had kind of started an in-house reappraisal where we actually, this was before COVID, we expected some downward shifting with some of the land values and stuff. We got about, I would say, a little ways into that, and then COVID hit. And that we stopped everything and it just all stopped. And then the market went bananas. In 20 or 21, our CLA went down underneath the requirement threshold to call for a reappraisal. If you recall, in 21, we were able to,
every town in the state.
in 21 we contracted with MEMC to bring this to bear by 25. So that's kind of how we got to where we are and why we didn't have a reappraisal before now. So long story short, there's a lot of older values that are kind of pre-COVID values, that people are going to be looking at the new one and kind of comparing it to the old one. The biggest thing is to basically tell people the old value is 20 years old, potentially. And that for 5 years, the market has dramatically changed, the inventory is non-existent.
Well, now, Manchester and Danby have both already done reappraisals and gone through this process.
Correct.
So how much did they have a lot of people coming in on their values, and was there much?
In terms of the grievance process, or I'm not sure the numbers, but typically the consultants say, like with this informal process, they're holding open space for 20% of the people to come in for informal. I think they told me that most they've ever had is 15. They expect it to be more like 10%, which ends up being a couple hundred, I think, which I think kind of held true in Manchester in terms of what less than that ended up actually. So there's the informal, and then there's the formal grievance, which is where you're sitting with the assessing department and you've got to find comps and you've got to fill out a form, and there's a formal process. And the informals typically have more, the grievances have less, and then after grievances, you go, it would be BCA, and that typically drops down kind of dramatically. But that said, you know, we would expect, you know, maybe 100 to 200 grievances, you know, which is a lot, you know.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have about 1,500 parcels or properties. So that's, you know, that's out of the 1,500, maybe a couple hundred might grieve. And then out of the ones that grieve, depending on what happens to the valuations, then they would go on to the BCA, and it's typically a fraction of that do. The BCA will be doing a training in a few weeks with Attorney Barlow to be, you know, to be kind of up to speed. There's a lot of new BCA members, so they will, you know, they will have hearings. There will be people that go that
The
far.
League of Cities and Towns has some training too. Is that
Yep,
basically
and
the same
Barlow,
thing?
it's, yeah, Barlow basically wrote it, so
Okay.
he's gonna do it directly for us.
So is all select board members BCA members?
It's a good question.
I think so.
I think they are.
I think you're right.
Automatically,
Yeah,
Automatically, right?
yeah.
so you'll get notification from the town clerk, who tends to kind of GC the BCA stuff. I think it's sometime in June for that training. And we'll try to have like a Zoom component to it as well.
So it looks like values are gonna go up 70 to 80%,
Pretty dramatically,
and
but
but
again, they're
then the mill rate will come down by,
going up a lot in comparison to values that are 20 years old.
So what happened with the education tax rates was Manchester and Danby, they reassessed before, and suddenly their CLAs went up to like 120 initially,
Yeah.
and then basically all of the towns ended up moving down pretty much in unison. So everybody moved down by about 10 points, and about everybody had it was a roughly equivalent impact on tax rates. So it was,
Yeah,
it ended up, it did sort of come and wash out, but that's on average.
Yeah.
You'll have some
the state numbers are a
homes that
little
probably are not
more
average.
difficult to predict. I could definitely speak pretty strongly to like the town tax rate. We expect it to go from, right now it's not quite 38 cents per hundred. We expect it to go to like 20, roughly, maybe 21, 22, but probably right in that 20 range somewhere.
Yep.
And that's
Because it's
based
the
on
same
the
amount of
preliminary.
dollars.
yeah,
Same amount of dollars you have to raise.
so that's
Correct, yeah.
a talking
Yeah,
point.
if
That's what you need.
if the dollar need has
But you are gonna see,
changed, then.
you are gonna see a different, so on average, it's all the same, but individual people will
And that's the kind of the
have
nuance.
some bigger and smaller
Yeah,
increases.
that's kind of the nuance to it, like the rate structure is definitely going down, you know, but if the assessment doubles,
Right, you're still going up.
there's still maybe additional money that's paid. And it's, I think the way the consultant kind of explained that there's about at least a third to maybe 40%, where you look at the preliminary numbers and you kind of track it along, and you can kind of, like, people are gonna go, okay, you know, it's all pretty logical, makes sense. Those are the ones that likely won't go to informals, won't grieve or anything like that. And then, you know, again, part of this is, you know, the in-house and then the statistical, the last full and then the statistical, there was a lot of internal work that was done by the town for that. This is really the first time in a long time that, you know, an external entity, that this is what they do, is kind of resetting the data set, and it's kind of starting from scratch, but using the current data. So, you know, the biggest thing is the data goes back to April 1st of '22 to the present, and that's required in that's the look back that they're supposed to have in statute. That's it. For people that do informals, you know, if you have an appraisal, you do the research, that's the type of stuff that you can bring to talk about the valuation and the discussion and get your questions answered.
But so the basics of it though are that people should assume that the new appraised value is relatively close to market value.
Absolutely.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, that's the lead, like,
But not to freak out, because the
It's
tax
in-
rate will go down.
it's in
Right.
statute, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a good news, bad news, like, oh,
Right.
no, my house is worth,
A lot more, and
that means my taxes are going up. No, they're not.
Right,
Yeah.
The
right,
mill rate will come down.
Situationally, they may.
right, right.
For some people, they may go up, for others, they may not be a big difference. So, yeah,
Okay.
and that's, you know, that's kind of the long of it, I guess.
Yeah.
We're just encouraging people to, if they have questions, you know, the
Give us a call.
consultants are making themselves available, and they're the
Yeah.
people that are, you know, that did the work in Manchester, I think they also did Danby. So there is a, you know, kind of a larger region that they're familiar with, that they're working in, so they've been through this before. So we encourage everybody to, you know, if you wanna get an appointment, you know, go ahead and do it. Same thing with the grievance process, everybody's entitled to it and you can do it, so.
All right, well, thank you, Rob.
Yep. Definitely hear more,
Questions?
and I will have, I had a little memo in there, I'll have another,
talking
Yeah.
points.
yeah, I'll have maybe a little more robust one that I'll send out
We can
probably
formalize.
next week, and then you guys can all, if you get questions,
Yep.
you can kind of refer to
You said the
that.
letters were going out like yesterday and today? They did go out?
They'll at you by the end of the week.
Yeah, I think, yeah, give it in the mail process, I would think by the end of the week,
Right.
people would start to be getting them.
Within the next month.
Yeah, you know, that, it's, yes, you can only do what you can do, and, one of the difficulties is, well, with a lot of non-resident
Oh, yeah.
mailing addresses.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and informals doesn't, it's not a requirement, and it certainly, if you don't participate, doesn't bar you from grievances. You can do one or both, or none.
But some people might, they're just really curious, they
Yeah,
set up an informal.
no, and I would, like I said, we would encourage it, because then you can kind of, you know, every property has a property record card, so it's good if you don't have, you know, get the new version of that, look through it, if you have questions, that's what the informals are for. And a lot of that stuff is, industry kind of specific stuff that's in the record card, that's, you know, easy to not understand, but, you know, an MC will have answers to everything.
All right, next item of business is to approve the retaining of, through this letter of commitment with MSK attorneys, who will be assisting us with, on the housing project, as we get some more serious proposals in, to develop the property.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of MSK attorneys Jeremy Marcus as counsel with respect to the housing project.
I'll second.
All right, Rob, just under discussion.
Sure.
When we met with Megan, one of the reasons to have this document was in case one of the developers, you know, also wanted to hire an attorney and went after these guys because they're one of the best in the state. But it seems in the second paragraph to say, to basically say there would be no conflict of interest. But there's the word direct versus indirect. Could you explain a little more what this means, where it says that our work on the town's behalf in connection with the proposed housing project will not give rise to a claim that a conflict of interest exists if MSK was to represent another client in connection with unrelated matters that may be adverse to the town. Okay, so it's gotta be, it would have to be unrelated matters.
Because I think but they're also saying they don't foresee. Do they know who we put the RFQ out to?
You know,
So they're not seeing
general
a direct conflict of
they're not
interest?
aware of any at this point. I know that was part of their, you know, their work that they have to do as far as due diligence to see if they're gonna be retained or if they've already been asked. And I haven't heard that they feel that they have one, so,
Okay.
I think we got to them first, I think is what I'm
Yeah.
kind of getting at. And that's the so I think,
But presumably that's.
I think you're reading that correctly, Henry, where if it's unrelated,
If they're helping them with a project in some other town.
yeah, or if it's a different issue.
Or if they were on retainer to one of the firms that's bidding, then they'd probably point that out to us at this point.
Correct, yeah. I just, yeah,
Well, I took a look through, I've dealt with a couple of these attorneys before, but,
Yeah, they're cheap, don't you think?
well, versus others,
Oh,
yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
I've seen $1,000 an hour.
Yeah, you're not being sarcastic.
But the,
Maybe a little.
the New York attorneys nowadays, but the,
$3.95 an hour,
that's
I wonder why the lower guys are only 200 an hour.
Paralegal?
paralegal,
Oh, the paralegal, okay.
which I'll tell you, that's where they get, you know, the junior lawyers, but paralegals are way overcharged for it. I mean, As you consider how much they get paid versus the attorneys.
All right. All right, all those in favor of approving this relationship, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
yep, and just a little bit of a rounding out that, Jeremy was, so when we were seeking the attorney recommendation, we talked to our attorney, and then, White and Burke, and they both, kind of external from each other, both recommended Jeremy and this guy, like without, talking to each other. And me basically asking two different questions to two different people at different spots, and that was like the quick, this person, so. So we got right on it, and hopefully, that's, I think, gonna be a good thing. Depending on what, comes of the housing stuff, and I think we can, if you want, we can try to give a little, today was the site visit for the RFQ. I think we had four unique entities there,
Yep.
which is great,
Really?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Well,
What it
one
is,
was
is-
Habitat
Yep.
for Humanity, and then one was Paul Caroccio, a local developer.
We put in on something for the Manchester land.
Yep, you
Yeah,
did.
one from Rutland, and then another group from kind of Rutland area, so,
Or Nail and Brain,
yeah.
which would be great. You'll have a greater relationship with them.
So, yeah,
And
good,
then Joe seemed to suggest there are two others. that-
yes, that he had communicated with, one I think from New Hampshire, and then one from up, like, north, I think.
Yeah.
And the site visit wasn't a prerequisite to send in information and make a proposal, so, there could be others. Their questions are due on this Friday, and then their initial kind of response to the RFQ is due on the 29th. So, after we get those on the 29th, then White and Burke will digest them and give us a kind of a memo and here's what to do next, type of thing. And then the next phase would be, okay, the board selects, if it's the slate or if it's a couple of them, to then make a more detailed, response to the actual request for proposal, which would be again, a much more detailed and in-depth, proposal from those entities. I think the general takeaway from today is that it's likely to be, hopefully something, and it may be a couple of different types of things, and the town might be looking at a couple of different, a couple of different options that maybe wouldn't necessarily compete with each other, that could actually kind of coalesce and could be, worked out kind of together. And that's where the attorneys and the kind of recommendations and all that stuff start to come in, and then we would have a certain time frame once we get those proposals back to then, review them, take them under, White and Burke's recommendation, and then the next step would be, some kind of agreements to start to actually carry out action.
At what point do you think we need to commit to the local options tax?
It's a-
Now wait till we.
I think you can,
have a two-family
yeah,
permit?
yeah, I think it can, I think.
What if it fails?
Yeah, well, no, I think it's a good question, and I think that's part of the discussion that the board, that the town needs to have, as to what's the, what we've represented to the developers, what they're expecting and needing, and then when we need to make sure that we've done, our part of that. So it may be earlier on, it may be, you could be looking at next March, that we're warning a local option tax piece, with this whole discussion about, trying to leverage it. I think, with that said, design is part of this, and permitting is part of this, and it's gonna take a little while to get through kind of that front entry design, get some cost estimates, know what we're actually talking about, if we're saying what kind of infrastructure is needed or what's gonna get built, so that we can inform that option tax discussion, or the vote, so to speak.
Well, what I'm worried about is the way we're kind of proposing this or structuring is that we are partnering with the developer. And so far, we have roughly $100,000 into, bringing this to where we are now.
We also have the land, we have,
So I'm
we have
just,
a lot invested,
so we may need more money.
but we also have all the land to, we're bringing a lot to the
Oh,
table.
yeah, no, I know that.
We're definitely talking about, we're talking about paying for infrastructure, helping pay for infrastructure,
Yeah.
that's a whole different category.
Yeah, you still have, some, you have ARPA funding, that's still kind of sitting there.
But it's worth,
In the reserve.
We
And then,
already
to your
have
point, Henry, it's maybe, and I think part of it is, see what transpires in terms of the proposals.
Yeah, yeah.
The general thought is the town helps to backstop kind of the holistic infrastructure that's needed to do, what probably is gonna be many phases of work,
Yeah.
but you're gonna need that infrastructure, to do the first phase.
but again, it's like, I think where we are versus like where Manchester is when they're asking for bids. They just, here's some land.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we're like,
you can buy it off of us, you can.
Yeah, we're a lot friendlier and a lot further along.
And that's kind of the hope, to be able to leverage, the type and the number of units that we're hoping for.
Yeah, and that was much appreciated this morning. That was even brought up this morning about, doing business with Dorset. Not a bad thing.
Yeah, my take, Henry, is when we get a little, further into it, we can ask Joe and Whitenberg what they kind of think of the sequencing of our portion of when do we need, how much money do we need, when do we need it, type of thing.
Okay.
So that we don't miss that opportunity. But that said, regardless of kind of who we develop agreements with, there's gonna be a design phase that goes through that's gonna be.
different options. You know, at our last meeting, we ended up essentially saying that, taking the position that we still have to keep Floodbrook open. So we're getting rid of the options that would have closed Floodbrook. But, you know, we have a few different options, but you've gotta go to, and there's going to, you're gonna see something very soon that is sort of a timeline for, you know, whatever we do, what are we gonna do next year as the first steps towards changes? And that could see some changes to the way we use Dorset and all that. So it's, you know, there are no absolute answers right now, but the first thing that we're gonna see is, that'll be most significant, you know, we're still working towards what is the long-term plan for, you know, what do we wanna propose to the town, you know, to the 9 towns in the TNG. But before that, it's gonna be, you know, recognizing with the direction we're trying to move in, and, you know, it still could be through a couple of different options. What's school gonna look like next year? Because it would make some sense to make start making some changes sooner rather than later.
I think my takeaway from the meeting, and I was just generally like, I think, from my vantage point, and I can't speak for the board, but it's, you know, having a school in Dorset would be important, if it's possible, right? I mean, I think the long-term thought of not having a school in Dorset is tough. And if Raptor Lane can be some assistance to the process, if it makes sense, if the community's all, you know,
Well, that's one of
go
the,
that way, then, you know, I think Raptor Lane is in a status now where nothing has been decided, there's plenty of opportunity. We're
Yeah.
talking about, you know, it doesn't mean that housing and the school couldn't go there.
but I think the town needs to think about, you know, it's a whole different element. If you ended up building housing plus building a school on that property, that's a whole different
Yeah, but
dynamic as far as, but right now, you have the, you know, the old thought of if we're gonna have a new building, then the first thought was Manchester just because it's the most central. But the honest truth is, it shouldn't be anywhere near the other school because
No,
you start
traffic.
having
yeah,
just huge
Huge.
traffic
Yes.
problems.
and from
So being up the, you
with
know,
Raptor, it's really, I mean, Dorset School, as the crow flies, is like less than half a mile away. So it's not, you know, it's not like it's in some random new neighborhood, it really is kind of in the same general
Yeah.
area.
and it's good access to it.
Yep, it's right off 30, it's kind of straight dedicated versus Morse Hill being, you know, a little more residential.
But it's, if you had a school up there plus residential in the town hall,
It would change
it
some of
would,
the flows.
the
for
nature,
sure.
you know, whole, yeah, it would be a lot of people.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so,
Any more on the housing?
we'll have more updates as we get to, you know, the question part this week, and then the actual responses next week. Should have something from Whitenburg to pass forward to the board as to, here's what we got so far. And then here's kind of the next steps.
And ultimately, decision-making is made by the select board and recommendations come from the housing committee.
I think that's a good way to describe it. You know, I mean, I think that so far we've kind of been feeding a lot of the stuff through that way. So I think you know, certainly the housing folks could meet with Joe and help to kind of summarize and then, you know, get the information to the select board in an actionable way when it comes to that point. Ultimately, you know, the agreements with whoever and whoever selected to submit a proposal, that's the select board's, you know, decision.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts on housing? All right, then we'll
Town office.
pay for our.
I could start with just making a motion that we approve the payment of $450,634.50 as payment number 10, requisition number 10 for the town
Second.
hall.
All right, we have a second?
Yep.
Thank you, and any discussion, it just seemed like a bigger number than before, but.
Yep.
I'm sure there's good reason for that.
Yeah, the roof is in there, I believe. A lot of
A
interiors.
lot of painting. too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, they're buzzing right along.
Yeah, getting
So
close to
it's
the end.
about 75%
Yeah.
at this point.
And mechanical services, that's.
Yeah, that's a big,
Big single
yeah,
chunks.
the HVAC stuff has been going on. That's one of the bigger parts of it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Yeah, so I got to go in the building for the first time this morning, and it was amazing.
Is that, I just drove up
It was like-
outside, that's all I've done so
It was
far.
like, wait, is this the town offices for like Albany, New York? Burlington, or, I mean.
So it feels different than this?
Oh my God.
It's a beautiful building.
It's amazing. It's open, so spacious.
Yeah.
Your offices are a little bit small, but.
Well, that's part of, if you remember when we went to redesign,
Yeah.
so we had priced it out in '21, priced it, and then did the bond, did all that stuff, and then repriced in like '22, and it was like, uh-oh.
Gotta peel back.
We peeled back like 700 square feet, I think. And that's kind of the stuff that,
That's
you know,
where we
the office is a
sacrificed.
little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. We didn't wanna lose any space in the meeting space.
For sure.
Those common areas. And the offices they're definitely, for the most part, a good bit bigger than what most people are in right now.
Yeah.
So, and the other piece too is that in the offices right now, there's a lot of like just loose, like office-specific storage that is gonna go to other locations. So that stuff won't be in the office, it'll be very, very austere.
Those extra file-like
Yeah, you
cabinets that are.
Like, yeah,
Everywhere.
we'll see how long we
Things that
can
you
go
haven't
without
looked
a
at in
thumbtack
20
on the
years.
wall. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a great place for staff to work, and it's gonna be a building that the town's gonna be very proud of, which is cool.
All right, then,
Did we vote on that?
we did
Yeah,
vote.
we're good.
Okay.
We
So I
would
can-
like to recess
Yeah.
our meeting, and a motion to recess the meeting and go and open the meeting of the Liquor Control Board.
I will make that motion.
First, or second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we do have, so there's, should be a
Just have the one?
Yep, third bullet under
Horse show.
horse show, which is to also have an outside consumption permit. So first, third, and outside consumption. Is the, what is up for approval?
Oh, outdoor consumption.
Yeah, which got to me a little bit.
So we need to have three different votes, or?
No, you can just vote for the slate of those three.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve
I'll
the
make a-
liquor license for.
I'll make a motion to
the horse
approve
show.
the first class, third class, and outside consumption license for Hits, the horse show.
I second.
Any discussion? No. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving right along.
You could just end the liquor control.
Oh, yeah, so, let's end adjourn the meeting of the Liquor Control Board, and we'll reopen our regular select board meeting. All right, what do you think of these bids, Rob?
So the paving, so we,
So, what are we paving?
good question. Piece, I should have, that's the first page to this that should have been probably included. But, so we're paving Peace Street, and we're paving part of Lane Road, which is just the apron that just kind of meets Lane Road and Route 30. And then we're also paving Frost Road, which is over here, and then Bowen Hill, which is again just like, it's about a 300-foot, the thing that goes.
At the bottom of it?
Yeah, it goes beyond Kathy and up to the Erie. So those
So what
three
was the
things.
breakdown of the A and Bs?
So B is A is Peace Street, and then B is all that other stuff that I just talked
Okay.
about.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a lot less than we spent last year, but
Yeah, Yep, yeah, last year
So
was,
this puts us back in a good position for our long-term plan.
yeah, no, we're doing very well, actually. Not that we weren't, but, and so in this case, the apparent low bidder, is Fuller Sand and Gravel.
And they've been pretty successful bidding on our stuff.
They've done most of our work the last 10 years,
So we're happy with them.
for the most part. Yeah, no reason not to award it to them.
Is there a
They're
reason?
local.
Well, I was just, why the use of the word apparent? As if you're not sure that they're the lower bidder.
Yeah, it should be qualified that, yes, when you do all the math and compare all the proposals, they are the low bid.
Okay. All right, a motion to approve Fuller Sand and Gravel of Danby, Vermont as the low bidder for paving in Dorset.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. All right, wow, okay, Rob, go ahead into old business.
Sure, we just talked about the town office stuff. I'm still, kind of saying that we're tracking in that 1 to 3% over budget. I think that we're going down. I think that we're starting to like,
The curve's going the other way.
it's curving the right way, which is good.
So 3% be roughly $100,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So hopefully 50,000 or
yeah,
even less.
yep, yep. So
Now-
pretty good on a 3.2 and change $1 million
Yeah,
project.
Mm-hmm.
On this point, so we have in unassigned ARPA funds about 200.
right.
So,
Correct, yeah.
so good shape.
Yeah, I'm just trying to kind of outline potential, like, hey, if we were to, go over, what would you try to pull the money from?
Well, we also are fairly under budget for the year,
A little bit, yeah.
so.
Yep, that's the other piece too, is just out of fund balance, right? If you have quite a bit of leftovers that you're expecting, then you would just pay it out, and then there it is. It just reduces whatever the fund balance is for the next year.
I was just curious here, on the solar,
Mm-hmm.
we assigned 125 of the ARPA funds for solar. Is that looking like a good number, or?
Should high. I think it's a high number. I think that we're more in the 80 to 90 range, and that in theory, if we were able to bring it to bear within the realm of there's a federal 30% kind of payback
Mm-hmm.
that we're supposed to be
To
entitled to.
municipals down?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That would reduce that number from the 80 or 90 down 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe
Great.
half of that 125
Wow.
might be in game, in play again. And we're trying to, talked about this last month, but the town garage has solar. We could buy that out for about 25 or 26,000, I
Just
think.
sounding like a good deal.
I think it is. So when you do, like, if you do like a per watt
Mm-hmm.
cost, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how they make these proposals, that's a lot less than
New ones.
what a new one would
And
be.
who owns it now?
Paul Crocio.
Okay.
How old are they again? The,
Guy's got his.
They're about seven years old,
okay,
maybe eight. I think they're gonna be 8 years this year.
it's still.
So they got
still
another
juice.
12 years.
Yeah, exactly.
12 years that from an accounting depreciation standpoint, but they'll work for 25,
Yeah, they just
31
start to
years.
lose.
Oh, okay.
They just lose
They
efficiency.
generally, they become less efficient after.
Yeah, they'll continue to
Longer.
work, yeah. So, that's one option. That produces more than enough for the town garage.
Mm-hmm.
If we put solar at the town office, you're actually not able to swap credits from like one
Oh.
solar place to another solar. Yeah, it's kind
Oh.
of silly. So the thought was that we would downsize the array at the office because this is oversized a little bit.
But that doesn't.
But functionally, we're not able to like move the money from one
Yeah.
spot to another. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't try to tie the fire department meters
Yeah.
to this one if we were to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then still kind of stick with the sizing that would be.
Because right now, is this building tied in with the town?
Nope,
No?
we just gotta, he owns it, so we actually just gotta with the
Oh, we just
agreement
get
that
our
we have,
slice of it.
He
we get
gets
like
the
a
credit.
slice of that, and it credits the town
Okay.
garage.
Got it.
Yeah, I think fine.
Alright. Okay, so we could still use it for something else?
Yes, yeah, so I think,
Alright.
doing both is probably still
The way.
trajectory, yeah, just trying to size it. And I think the solar for the offices, we're probably looking at, it probably would be sometime next year that we do the actual, you know, install and the work and all that. I think that the hope is to try to get everything buttoned up, try to get it potentially paved, this fall, and then it's, you know, all kind of ready for spring '26, that we would, have a proposal for solar at the office, sketch, all that stuff, and then approve that for probably work in '26. I'll try to move along quickly here, so the East Dorset stuff, we've just reseeded Chanticleer, still waiting on, some updated cost estimates from the engineer that we worked with related to moving, Brookside Road. One of the good things to kind of report back is kind of the activity with the change of the bridge has allowed a much greater volume of water to get out of the general area. So I think really the first part of like snow loss and frost coming out of the ground, there was water over Brookside for a short period of time, but nothing compared to where it kind of has been the last few years. So clearly the bridge was a pretty large contributing factor to the backing up of the water that impacts Brookside. So we'll continue to kind of monitor that, but it still seems like there will be FEMA funding to potentially move the road. So it probably does make sense to continue to try to
I
pursue
mean, it
it.
makes sense, because that railroad bridge is,
Yeah.
what, 12 inches higher?
It's about 3 feet,
3 feet
yeah,
higher?
yeah.
And it's also wider.
Much, yeah, yeah.
So that's
So the volume of
huge.
water that's getting through that wasn't before is, yeah, you
I
kind
mean,
of.
it was
Is it
before it was
impacting the silt
literally.
at all? Huh? Is it impacting the waterway beyond it?
Yes.
Is all that extra volume coming, kicking stuff out?
It's trying to, yeah, yeah. And it's slowly, the river's basically slowly moving to the north.
That's the new direction you created, yeah, okay.
So I mean, that slowly isn't even the word, right? As far as rivers move, it's moving very fast. Usually rivers don't move so quickly. Usually takes a long time. So it is kind of doing what, with the additional volume, there are impacts to Safe Place a little bit, just because the water flow is different.
Right.
So far, I don't think they've had any water like in buildings or anything like that with the runoff, but it's something that we may, there may be some discussions about. There's water on it would be the east side of the ballast of the railroad tracks that it could help if there were some culverts and stuff in there. And I'm trying to navigate through, is it Vermont Emergency is there a funding source that could potentially help?
Well, it's gonna be,
With
the
that-
railroad owns that, right?
The railroad owns the rail bed, but there's private property with the self-storage buildings
Right.
right on the other side.
But they're pretty
And-
close to the railroad tracks.
They're pretty close, but with the change in the water flow, there's just more water there now. And there may be more and different impacts to that property, so that we've been kind of chasing the water around, trying to help private property that's impacted by flooding, and this may be a new,
But
a
this
new
must,
minor.
this must be relieving. Remember Jamie Penji was
Mhm.
really incensed.
Yeah, no, and that's
This must be really,
So the water is getting out of that area much more rapidly.
yeah,
Yeah. And I'm saying it's going to a new area much more rapidly.
right.
So there's another, the downstream piece.
Well, at least it's not,
But it's a different, it's not inundation of buildings like it was
Yeah.
as Chanticleer.
yeah.
So, different. So there may be some movement on that. We do have to, once the grass gets growing there, we gotta put a fence in. And that, and not to go off in left field, but that property is owned by the town. You can't put structures on it, but in the past,
Dog park.
yeah, green space and
Just what I was.
green space and recreational use is conducive to the FEMA land that the towns typically own.
Could
so.
we put a fence up?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. It's, they have
Electric fence.
they have the word, they have the word structure, so, you know, whether or not it's the best place for it, I don't know, but that's just, it is a, open space that the town owns now.
Okay.
Let's see, MSK is doing, they completed the survey work for Route 7. And we did expand kind of the scope of it a little bit, so essentially what they're gonna come up with and present to us at some point is traffic calming ideas from Frost Road to like, Village Street or the intersection with 7A. And so that is kind of the confines. They will come up with a couple of different proposals as to what we could do. Sidewalks, narrowing the road, stuff like that. And Route 30 speeding, there's not a lot of updates there, other than we're trying to get through processes to put up some different, more permanent radar signs that comply with the state. Upper Hall lot, did hear from Mance, they're working on it, I think is the update there. I don't have a time frame as to when I might see something back. Short-term rentals, we continue to kind of inch up. I think we're actually at 47 or 48 now, because a couple came in, so. Which gets us into that, we think there's about 60 right now, and it's fluid. I mean, they come on, they come off, but we think that there's probably about 60. So we are, you know, almost more than 3/4 toward getting them all registered, which is good.
That's gonna generate a little bit more money than we're spending on.
A little bit.
On it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether there are other things you think that money might make sense to do with respect to short-term rentals or anything.
It's a good question. You know, nothing, I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, just something to think about.
I mean,
So, to me, that correlates more with the Rector Lane subsidizing, right, because you're charging the people who are taking away permanent housing
Right.
and giving it to supporting permanent housing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a better solution than the option tax. I think people would go for that.
It's a lot smaller.
Yeah, it's not much money, but.
Yeah,
not a-
but it's more logical.
Yep.
Well, we could up the fee.
Yeah,
Maybe in here again if we do that.
$1,000 each.
Yeah. And then the garage solar stuff we talked about. That's kind of it for old business, new business.
Okay, great. And then any questions for Ron? Good with those. Okay, we move on to the finance report.
Yep.
85% through the budget, 90%.
Yeah, and I had emailed emailed the expense report in the detail. If you want to take a look at that, it is an email. I don't have printed forms here because I had to run out of here early this afternoon. But I can, in general terms, 85% through the expense side of the budget at 90% of it through the year. So like Henry said earlier, we're tracking kind of 4 to 5% under budget, which is good.
It's just, it's tough to make the adjustments to the expense report though, because all the other
It's
stuff
kooky.
flowing through. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And that's when and that's after adjustments, Jim, so that's with all the FEMA money getting backed out, all the, there's some engineering expense, paving, there's a bunch
Right,
of like
that's the
stuff that has
5%.
offsetting revenues, and the way that they want us to put it in there on the expense side is to book the thing in there, and then there's an offsetting revenue.
Right, because overall, I mean, the expense report shows us 200% of revenue.
Correct, yeah, if you look at it, the bottom line looks like
Sure.
it's like we spent $6 million or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But when you back all
We
that
just
stuff
have
out.
a few items to pull out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, I think we're doing pretty good, which is good. The sinking fund stuff below is updated with the number, I think the change is for Whitenburg, that's just an updated accounting of kind of where we are. And that includes, everything they've done so far, which is that front end study that we did to kind of make sure that we're on the right track, and then to retain them to do the RFQ and RFP. So that's kind of where we are there. We do expect I think some more stuff on the VHB side pretty soon. They did, if you recall, they're chasing down some environmental stuff, redoing the wetlands review, looking at bat trees, looking at bear habitat, and looking at the plant items. Plant item work is gonna be done somewhere in the summer, so we should have a report from them late summer, I think, which will kind of help inform all this stuff that we're talking about with the housing and the property.
So the 175,000 for this site, it's gonna be less than 100,000 to demolish.
We think, yeah,
So the other
like 80 to
80 or 90.
95 is kind of the benchmark that we're using. So that, and on that front, there is actually a village group that's kind of organized around some planning and coming up with a proposal for what goes here. So
Okay.
I think at one of the future board meetings.
We're gonna have them all over town.
One of the future, yeah, I don't.
Dog parks
It's the
everywhere.
first thing I thought
I
of. when you
didn't
said
see a
that.
dog park in the sketch that they sent me a little while ago, so you can certainly ask them what they feel about it. But, so the village, the residents of the village are kind of driving that process, which is actually great. So I think they're
Yeah, it's
they're gonna
perfect.
pick what they want, so at some point, I think maybe in a couple of months, they'll come in with their sketch, and kind of an outlaying of, here's this, here's what it costs, and we'll compare that to what we have as far as resources.
And they have a ballpark idea of what the resources is.
Yep, they know, yep, they know what's
So
there.
is
and
this
they know.
just a couple of people, or is it fairly,
I would say half a dozen to 10, maybe.
oh, nice,
Yeah,
half a dozen to 10 houses?
10
Families.
individual families, yep, that are all kind
That's
of.
awesome.
Yeah, I would say two kind of leaders, and then at least half a dozen or more families that are all
Okay.
giving input, so that whatever goes here,
Yeah,
They
got
picked-
some,
they've picked it, they
Consensus
wanted it,
building.
they've kind of worked through it. And I think they're gonna leave a lot of open, it'll be a lot of it'll be grass, and a lot of it'll be green. There will be a little more playground stuff, maybe a pavilion space, but kind of retaining some grass so that people can use the whole thing.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the finance report.
Second?
any discussion? Thank you, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Finance report is approved. Next is the town manager's report. We probably talked about it all, Brian.
We'll see if we did or not. Yeah, well, we got a new backhoe, which is good. So awaiting grant application response for Lower Hollow Bridge, we got the grant, yay.
Oh, good.
All right.
So it's about $240,000 worth of work. The people that live there on the near side of it, I mean, on the far side of it, near the bridge, you're gonna have to drive all the way around for about a month.
You mean Dave McEnany?
Yep. Yep, Dave is in that class.
And
But it's about a $240,000 project, and the grant will cover 200 of it. So it's very good. It's good, really good stuff.
Great.
And we think about 3 to 4 weeks of downtime for the work. I don't have a window yet, but when I do, we're gonna try to do kind of an immediate mailing to
Yeah.
everybody that's in that vicinity, just to kind of, with the dates, here's the dates, are there any issues, like,
You have a contractor?
yeah, Daniel's Construction will do the work. They're the ones that did the work in the river a couple of years ago, if you remember, and they've done a bunch of other stuff for the town, retaining walls and bridges. So that's a really good thing, because that's the type of thing that could wait. The grant cycle could be years.
That was a big number too.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
so,
was just curious, we had the Vermont Highway Department in before about big culverts, Route 7, all that stuff. And they were down Shaftesbury and all too, and then some of that work got called off, I guess, or delayed or something.
at the state level, yeah.
So is that impacting us at all, what they were gonna?
with some of the stuff that they presented on here as far
Yeah.
as Route 30 and stuff, I'm not sure.
Is that, or is that, that's years down the road?
I think it's
anyway.
years down the road and it may
Okay.
not, it may or may not be. I think that they're pulling back stuff that was specifically supposed to happen this year. They're like clawing it back.
Because of the feds or
State.
state, well,
Yeah,
states.
I'm not sure, I don't think that, I'm assuming
Doesn't
it's
matter.
transportation fund revenue that they're not seeing, and that's why they're pulling it back. Which is akin to, you know, all the electric cars don't pay for gas tax. So, we've slowly been doing that, you know, kinda like, so that won't impact, no impact to us, cause our money is separate, but just, it is something to note and be
Okay.
aware of. Other stuff real quick, the fire district, did receive, bid results back last week. And they're, long story short, it seems like a Route 30 project to do service lines that were not completed is kind of potentially in the offing. And it's gonna allow them to, they have about $850,000 of grants and loan forgiveness left to use. And that project will use about 625 of it, in theory, which is good. So they're gonna get a third construction cycle into the same kind of loan. And they're gonna be, so far, they had their annual meeting, 2 weeks ago, last week. And when you kind of do you add up the services, you add up the small diameter mains that were replaced, they've replaced, at this point, probably more than half of the pipe that exists in the system, which is a lot to do in 3 years.
Out of the 165, 70, how many are?
So from a linear foot standpoint, they've replaced about half of it. And that's everything, that's all the mains, there's about 30,000 linear feet.
From a customer standpoint, how many?
85 new lines,
Okay, so
like 85 all new lines, there's 20.
also half.
There's 27 that are pending, that were, so the bids that we had, there was two, it was for 27 additional services where people didn't sign easements before we had a contract, and then they came right in. We signed the contract with a certain amount, I think it was like 99 or something like that. But then the new stuff that came in, the contractor wasn't obligated, it wasn't in the contract. So we're gonna try to get those done too, so, at some point. So another summer of work in Dorset Village, related to water, so. Trying to think if there's anything else here. I don't really think so, other than the target date still August 25.
The Prentice Pond
It's
study,
moving. Sorry, Jim?
the Prentice Pond study?
Yep, don't have it yet. They keep kind of pushing me off. It was supposed to be like last winter that they had initially said, and it just now, my last touch point, I think, was in March, and they told me May, June.
Not that we wanna rush it, but.
Yeah, really.
Well, it is gonna inform a bunch of other stuff.
No news is good news.
Yeah, it is gonna inform some water stuff. There may be some, like, synergies that, you know, where we all need to kind of look at all of our stuff and try to do something to get the fire district, town, highway stuff, and try to see what we can, my goal is to, like, where's the money coming from? That's the,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
however we can best package it to figure out.
To get money
what-
from the most sources.
Correct, yeah, that's gonna be the way that we look at it, so, good, that's pretty
Okay.
much it.
So are we still planning to hook up the new well? in
So we are,
Shady Road this summer?
Yeah, we're waiting for, the first thing is the source permit, we're waiting for that, and then we're waiting for, what's called a preliminary engineering report, related to, the source itself it's a shallow well, so there's gonna be some level of kind of a building that's gotta get built, some level of potential treatment that's gotta get prescribed. So the PER, report is gonna put costs on all that. And that's where the prudential board's gonna have to look at what are those costs, and how does it dovetail with the money they've spent so far and the debt load, and then how are they gonna kinda, tackle that and present it. So the trajectory still potentially is that it, you know, by the end of the year, they could have a new permitted source hooked up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep. And that's, essentially getting the district new water on paper.
Very cool.
Because the well itself is probably not gonna get used. Really, like ever. Other than to like run the pumps and make sure everything functions. The work that they've done with the services have tightened up the system to where they've got plenty of water, like 99.9% of the time. So the exercise of the well is really just like it's a safety net, which is not, it's not bad to
Yeah, I
have.
mean, if we had a serious drought.
Correct,
for-
yeah, it would cover that, and then it'll allow for additional allocation, which is the, you know, the
The
people.
extensions.
The extensions, the people that wanna add on to their houses, the people that wanna change use, stuff like that, it'll starts to open that up, so. And there's a few of them in there, yeah, they're all tagged.
This one?
Yep. It's like, I think a couple weeks worth.
What was Frank doing?
Senior night.
Oh, that's
Senior
right.
night for Henry.
That's
So he's a big lacrosse player, and and Frank it'd be like me with baseball.
Yeah.
It's the same, it's the last probably lacrosse game that Henry will play, so it's a big deal. Hopefully they win. They're very good.
Where's Megan?
Good team?
Very good, yeah. Yeah, they have some, the boys have a chance, I think, to make a little run, which would be really cool.
In the playoffs, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Where's Megan at? She traveling someplace interesting?
Oh, Megan had a good friend who was turning 75, so she really wanted to go to
Yep.
her celebration, so I said,
Good.
"Oh, no problem." And she'll be in London next meeting
Stuff
for her
right.
daughter's wedding.
Oh, that's right, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
So I'll be running next,
I'm
Next
gonna
month's
be
meeting.
away with my kids, so I can zoom in
Oh,
from
good.
Maine.
Yep, and if you wanna, next meeting date would be June 17th.
Yeah, so then I'll be not here.
okay.
And we definitely have the hybrid option.
Yeah, I mean, it's reasonably quiet, actually. I mean, we got a lot going on, but.
We do, yeah, but not a bunch of, I think we'll have a bunch of action, you'll have some feedback from the reappraisal.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that may manifest into the meeting. And then maybe some feedback for the housing developer submittal, or first part of the submittals.
Yep.
Those probably be the two things to maybe look at. So,
There'll likely just be the three of us again, except Allison will be online. All right, is there any other business that anyone would like to bring up?
Final thing I might just mention again on the schools, just said earlier, there'll be some things coming out on structure and all that, but one thing we're just discussing right now, we're trying to make sure, there's a lot of, currently, the House passed their portion of education transformation, it's H454, there's a version that was passed in the House, and the Senate got a hold of it and came up with a totally different structure. At this point, from a district and also being on the Vermont School Board Association board, I think at the state level, there's sort of a preference for the House version. But we've got a little concern, we're gonna be trying to communicate a little bit more through the papers and everything else, directly to our community, to our towns, because we don't think people are aware of what this all means, and it's pretty substantial. you got a House version, a Senate version, then they, once they have those passed, then they fight in conference committee to come up with, you know, what that'll be presented to each for the, to go back to each body to get hopefully approved by those bodies and then signed by the governor.
But he'll veto it anyway.
Well, not necessarily,
I'm just
but
kidding.
it's,
He likes to veto.
we've been spending a lot of time and effort on this as school districts, and, you know, it's like I've got the RSU, all the board leaders, we've been meeting weekly since January, and, you know, following things. It's, at this point where things are, we think it's important to start telling people in our communities what these options are and what it could do for us. Because I think there's, you know, a lot of it had been looked at from the perspective of sort of theoretically, okay, how does all this work? And we're talking about a new way of funding schools, and talking about them restructuring the way the schools operate. But nobody has really been paying much attention. We've been starting to pay more attention to what it means as far as, you know, of course, school budgets are one thing, but then what it's gonna mean in terms of taxes. And I think, you know, where we are right now, we're starting to think, we've thought in the past that we had some control over our taxes through our school budgets. The new approach is towns wouldn't necessarily be voting on school budgets anymore. There'd be an amount of money there, but then the way the tax system would work, nobody's really been focusing on that at all. And we might be talking about what they're proposing now, like a single statewide tax rate for schools that's pretty consistent across every district of the, you know, everybody in the state, which would mean you'd have, like, under the way the Senate has set up their foundation formula approach, there are districts that would be getting, you know, up to 40% more money for to spend in their schools, and other districts that are getting up to 30% less money to spend in their schools. And under that one, half of the districts in the state would be either getting 10% more or less than they're now spending. So it would have some pretty big impacts.
Yeah.
But that really wouldn't have, you know, initially we had some concerns that, okay, then all that extra spending, then those districts are gonna have to pay for it in their tax rate. No, they aren't, but a lot of those districts that are getting a lot more money have been artificially spent, you know, they've been spending very little on their kids. Their kids should be getting more money, but that means they've had a very low tax rate, and if you go to a single tax rate all across the state,
Yeah.
they're gonna have a huge increase in
Right, right.
taxes. You have towns that have been spending a lot more, real high spending towns, and they've, you know, proved that in the past. They're gonna be, you know, with a single tax rate, that's gonna drastically reduce their tax rate. All these implications haven't really been discussed. Not only not hashed out, but not really discussed. So we're gonna be starting to come out with trying to educate people and make sure that, you know, I was talking to the superintendent, you know, for a while today. I was just talking about, you know, I say it scares the heck out of me. I've spent a lot of time on this, a lot of effort, been together. I write the legislative updates for, you know, for all our people, every month. And I can't say that I'm confident that I understand how it works. And I spent a lot more time on this than almost anybody,
It's
so.
already complicated.
It's gonna be a mess, but I think, I just think it's important that people start getting their arms around what this means, because as this heads towards people wanting to get everything signed off on and approved, then I think, you know, where we're gonna be very active until it gets to that point. And then after that, we're gonna be very active with, you know, for the next, through all of the rest of this year, with how the restructuring the districts. But I think I just wanted to bring up with you guys especially, because, you know, we're looking at the taxes here and the tax impact of the reassessment and all that.
But then there's also
But
gonna be this other
The
thing.
schools it's gonna be, I would have to say there will be a lot of people who are very surprised and upset.
And this is on the funding side.
Yeah.
That you're talking.
The funding side, we absolutely believe as a district that we need a whole new structure, and the idea of this foundation formula, we think it makes sense. But how it's applied,
It's only done in almost every other state in the
Yeah,
country, right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
but how we put it into place and, you know, how it's implemented and
Where Vermont
how
is so
it then.
special, they have to do it differently. That's the general.
No, we should be doing it, we're all okay with doing that.
Yeah, no, I'm
But how
just,
you have to make a lot of decisions as you're doing that.
oh, sure, and there's
And then you also have
winners
to,
and losers.
but it's, but on the funding side, but then there's a whole different, you know, it's on the funding side, the foundation formula can, you know, I think it is the way to go.
Hmm?
But people are used to saying that our school spending ties into our taxes.
It's kind of
You
breaking the
totally break that
two
now.
of those, yeah.
Because I mean, we've had in recent years, we were upset when,
And you have no.
in our local districts, we didn't increase our spending very much.
You have no.
But at the state level, they increased it a lot overall, and so we got hit with high increases.
I mean, the thought of no decision-making in the process of what your taxes are is kind of a scary
It's a scary thought.
thing, right? Very scary.
It's a very, you know, it's a very big part of our taxes, and if it's suddenly we're not voting on a budget or we're not having any say in anything.
Yeah, it starts to become political.
So I just wanted to flag for you guys that you'll probably be seeing.
But on the governance side, there's nothing to worry about as far as
Oh, no, there's plenty of,
independence and all.
the governance side, there are two, you know, very, very different, also very different between the House and the Senate. I think from our perspective, you know, as far as, you know, concerns of like, you know, Burton going away, that's all, you know, that's forget that, that's not a problem.
For now.
But some independent schools having less impact or less availability, that certainly can
Could
happen.
happen.
I would have to think, you know, under what's currently there on the House and the Senate side, certainly Burton and Long Trail are both, you know, Long Trail could be more impacted because they cover more grades. But we're not looking at them going away. But we do have, you know, when the governor came out with his plan, the Vermont Superintendent's Association, they broke the state into 5 different districts. And that's what the governor used for his 5 proposed school districts. I think what the Senate's now doing, and that's Seth, is the Vermont School Board Association, that I'm on the board, we have 11 districts.
Yeah.
And I think his plan is 11 districts. I think the way the House was approaching it all, it's more likely you could end up having something like 25 districts that are kind of, you know, right now we have 119 school districts. So you go with something that, you know, it wouldn't be just here, you know, the geographic lines now would be, because we're now talking like, you know, the Meadowy School's talking to Wells Springs, which is Wells and Middletown Springs and all. And they're talking about, gee, if we're all forced together, then Meadowy's the new school and all this stuff, and, you know, it could make some sense to try to figure out a way to consolidate. We're trying to have those discussions, and that's the way to consolidate operations, not just by saying that, you know, now we're gonna, you know, the folks in Pownell and the folks up north of Rutland are all gonna be in our school district. And just make it work. You know, it's because it's not gonna work. So, you'll probably be seeing a little more communications, but I'm happy to take it. If people are asking you any questions about the schools,
Send them to Jim.
that's fine.
All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.